Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back for some more EVE Online and welcome back also to Jita, the trade hub for EVE Online. Now this time I'm doing the video from this Tristan. It's actually a small PvP Tristan that I have ready in Jita, and that's right, look up there, you're seeing correctly, that's a kill mark on this Tristan. So this one is fit for PvP. Perhaps in case of a war deck, but also in case of like a pirates, burn Jita, stuff like that. This is why I've got this little ship prepared, and on one occasion I managed to catch someone unawares and actually get the kill mail for that one. The fit, as always, in the description of the video. But for this one I actually want to talk a little bit more about the market and also take another look at faction warfare, because of course we have just gotten the latest release with changes to faction warfare, and one big change has been that the loyalty point payouts for, well, you could say the PvE activity for capturing stuff is going down, whereas the loyalty points for PvP kills within the faction warfare are going up. And so I really am curious if all of this is just going to make it even worse to try and predict the faction warfare market. I usually try to keep an eye on that through the ships. They are of course like front and center when it comes to faction warfare specific ships. Of course we get all the Navy faction ships. So let's take a first look at the battleships, for instance. Navy factions, and you can see here we got Apocalypse, Armageddon, obviously Mars ships, then we got Dominic's Megatron for the Galente, Raven and Scorpion for the Caldari, and then Tempest and Typhoon for the Minmatar. And as you probably know, perhaps for newer players this is like newer information, Amar faction warfare always goes up against Minmatar faction warfare, and then Caldari and Galente also fight against each other. And the general vibe that for years and years has always been the case was if one of the two factions was dominating, they were getting a lot of LP, and that LP would go down in value, making their faction ships, for instance, quite a bit cheaper. And at the same time, of course, the other faction would be struggling to make LP. That LP would be going up in value substantially, making those ships very, very expensive. And that has been like a wavy pattern that kept coming back again and again. And it made for some rather predictable trading. It also made for some manipulation. There's of course players that have toons in every single faction that also try to manipulate all of those payout multipliers and things like that. But it made for something that was really, really interesting, a part of the market that was tied to a PvP slash PvE activity in EVE Online, where you can actually see the results of players playing in the sandbox directly on the market. Let's get started on this. For instance, I can show you this chart. Here is the Apocalypse Navy issue. You can clearly see that in May we had a very large peak at 550 million ISK. That should indicate very expensive Amar faction warfare points. And then after that we get a big slump here after the summer, obviously. And then here, a bit more jittery. I've got a little bit less of a clear picture on what's been happening lately. And this actually, if you follow EVE Talk from time to time, I take a look at some faction ships as well, and you see we've seen there that it was already becoming harder to really see what was happening. Now sometimes that happens when there's a bit more of a stalemate, when the situation is not completely imbalanced, but I was really struggling with finding, okay, this faction is winning out, so we can grab a couple of cheap ships and then hope for things to turn around, and in a couple of months maybe we can expect to get a profit on there. All of that stuff seems to be gone, and I think it will be even harder to do now, since you know, PvP kills, you can also get lots of kills and still lose in faction warfare. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how all of that works out. But let's take another look as well at the Armageddon Navy issue here. Very similar situation in the first part of the year as well. 600 million ISK April, May. After that we get a summer slump. So you could say, if you want to read this, at least this first part of the chart, I would say here again harder to see because we're not really at a bottom or a top. We get some very volatile movements as well. Really weird to see exactly what's happening on that one. But obviously April, May, very expensive Amar loyalty points, and then they should have been winning out, and all the way down here in August, September, we've got really cheap faction warfare loyalty points with half the price on the Armageddon Navy issue. And of course, the ships that should see the exact reverse of that are the Minmatar ships. Let's take a look at that. Here is the Tempest Fleet issue, and it's not very pronounced, but you can clearly see that we started at the bottom here at 250 million for the Tempest Fleet issue, and at least here in July, you could see a little bit of a peak up to 350, and after that, yeah, it's a little bit gone again, that link between the two. Now the Typhoon Fleet issue might be a bit more popular, and here we've got something that is a little bit more logical, again, right until the end, because Armageddon Navy issue still not recovering at the end, Apocalypse Navy issue, yeah, big slump here at the end, and then the Typhoon Fleet issue, first part of the chart, exactly as we would expect, April, May, we start at 300 million ISK, and then the Minmatar faction warfare starts to struggle, so their LP becomes more and more and more expensive, and right here in October we get a peak at 500 million ISK as well. Very natural two charts right here that used to be rather predictable, but at the tail end now, a slump for the Typhoon issue, Armageddon Navy issue, I'm not seeing a big recovery here, Apocalypse Navy issue, really kind of bad as well in my opinion. So this is something that was already changing. I really got that feeling that, you know, I can't predict this stuff anymore. I can't read it very easily anymore. And I think it's going to be even worse now, of course, with this update. Let's also take a look at the Galente Caldari side for the battleships. Here is the Dominic's Navy issue. In my opinion, also a decently popular ship, although less than 10 are being traded on average every single day. It's still a good drone boat for Galente, mission ship, things like that. We've got a massive peak right here in April, started at 350, went up to 500 million ISK. Throughout the summer we stayed pretty expensive, 550 million ISK, and then right here in December again we've got this slump. Does the Megatron Navy issue show something similar? Yep, starts right pretty low at 300 million ISK, really sharp up to 450, and then 500 million for most of the summer, early fall, and then we get a little bit of a slump. And what are we talking about here for Caldari? Well, I feel like this is a little bit more reasonable. You've got this sharp increase at first. And then for the Raven Navy issue, you've got this sharp decrease from 550 million ISK down to 350 with a bottom at 300, right when the Megatron Navy issue peaks to 500 million ISK. Very cool, of course, if you're looking for trades, if you're looking for something that you can time and that you're normally going to get a nice return on, this was really the dream. And here at the tail end, Megatron Navy issue, you know, not doing that well, but you would expect more of a slump if you look at the rise for the Raven Navy issue up to 500 million ISK. Again, very expensive Caldari loyalty points at the moment. And this is great if you're looking to make some ISK in a market in a rather predictable way, albeit something that's completely different from what I've tried to do, of course, with the Tech-to-Ship market. It's much less of a short-term trade thing. This is really where you have to ride the waves of faction warfare and keep an eye on what's happening in that part of the game, which I honestly don't really pay close enough attention to. But look at this opportunity, right? You could have bought these Megatrons for like 300 million ISK here, sold them for 500, and at the moment, of course, you can consider buying. They are selling for, people are trying to buy them for like less than 360 million ISK. Raven Navy issue, man, if you could have bought these for 300 million ISK right here in September, at probably the height of Caldari faction warfare, you could sell them now for 516 million ISK. That is a lot of potential profit, of course. And then the Scorpion Navy issue, all right, this is still decently well in line, but what I don't really like is basically you've got this very sharp decrease from 550 million down to 300, and look at where we are now, 400 million ISK. In the middle of that, slight wavy motion, but very stable in a price that's not really expensive, not really cheap either. So I really wonder, will this predictability, which is, I mean, super nicely represented here between the Megatron Navy issue and the Raven Navy issue, same with the Armageddon Navy issue and the Typhoon Fleet issue, for instance, that was really super nice, I think, but Is that gone? Definitely a question that I want to ask you guys. Do you think that we'll see far less predictability in these markets now that these changes have hit? Or do you think that eventually all of this will actually settle down and that we just need to wait for like a real domination from one of the sides compared to the others for a real opportunity to buy again and then to try and ride those waves to profits? We'll also take a look at the cruisers here. We've got faction cruisers, Navy faction. Try to go over this maybe a little bit more quickly, but this is very, very pronounced at the tail end here. Look at that, faction warfare points going up in price substantially, back up to 70 million ISK for the Augur Navy issue. And then here is the, no, it was not the Executor, but the Omen. This is what I don't like, right? Why the hell does the Augur Navy issue jump up to a one-year high point of almost 70 million ISK, and then the Omen Navy issue, yeah, just a little move up from 40 to 50 million ISK? And are we seeing the opposite in the Minmatar ones? Here is the Scythe. Nope, right in the middle of the chart at 45 million. Very, very strange. Compare that also. Something that doesn't really jive with me here. June to October, Minmatar goes down in price and Augur Navy issue goes down in price as well. What the hell was happening here? And then we get the Stabber. Okay, still also 50 million, a little bit in the middle of the chart. Where is that predictability? Where are those nice waves? Perhaps we'll see them in like more popular Caldari ships. This should be potentially something really good, right? Caracal Navy issue starts the year at 80 million ISK, goes down to 30 million in September at its bottom, and is now back up to 70 million ISK. This is very nice. If we see the exact opposite in a Galente ship, the amount of ISK you could make here would be really amazing. So here is the Executor Navy issue. Yeah, not that predictable, I would say. 70 million at the top. And let's take a quick look at the Caracal. Becomes rather expensive in October, so that one still makes some sense, I would say. But here at the tail end, look at how volatile this is. This is kind of crazy. And then I think, unfortunately, for the Vexor Navy issue, yeah, we are going to get a really weird chart. Main reason for that is because CCP changed this ship. It was a super popular PvE platform for ratting in Nullsec and things like that. They took away all of that drone firepower, made it more of a PvP brawling ship, and as a result, well, the Vexor Navy issue just is not as popular anymore, and so that price dumped down while the Caracal was also down in price substantially. So of course this is a factor that you can never predict beforehand. That is of course the CCP factor. If CCP decides to buff or nerf a ship in this category, well, that is going to of course wreak havoc with that predictability that was so nicely shown by some of these battleships. Maybe we'll end up with the frigates as well, just to see if we can find some other nice patterns here. But yeah, again, what I like, the first part of the chart, right, starts at like 18 million ISK probably in all likeliness, and then bottoms out at 5 million. That feels like a nice little wave to ride. Where are we now? 12 million, right in the middle of that. Not a good place to buy, not a good place to sell. And then the Federation Navy Comet. We do have an opposite part here again in the early start, right? Caldari starts high, goes low. Federation Navy Comet starts at 10 million ISK. It goes up to 18 million ISK. Really nice profits on that one. And then right now has been struggling at 10 million, pretty low as well. Whereas the Caldari Navy Hook Bill, I wouldn't call this a high price for the ship either. So again, that difference is much less pronounced. It is possible, of course, that faction warfare has been less one-sided, and that's the reason why we have this change here, this price that actually basically meets each other a little bit more. But I feel like it's going to be even worse, as I've said, because of the changes to that loyalty point market. We could take another look. Imperial Navy Slicer. Look at that really good early start of the year. Starts at 20 million, goes down to 7.5 million. You could make a lot of ISK or lose a lot of ISK on this one, and now we've got a slow uptrend. And are we seeing something opposite here? This is actually decent. This is more what we're looking for. Start of the year you buy for 7.5 million, and then in November you sell them for 15 million ISK. Double your ISK. Not bad at all. And basically this whole gap right here in Imperial Navy slicers comes corresponds with this increase in price for the Firetail. That is very nice. At the tail end here, we're going back up in price, and Republic, well, it did drop in price. So yeah, this one makes quite a little bit more sense. I personally love to follow this kind of stuff. I would basically need to maybe put like a couple of alts in faction warfare or something like that, try to take part in it myself, earn some LP, and then try to cash out on these waves. But it is becoming harder and harder to do, in my opinion, especially with the change that CCP has done to faction warfare. Talking about this, I'll show you guys one of the ships that I did buy very cheaply. Is an Osprey Navy issue. And right now, I was looking, when am I going to sell this one? I feel like it's too early. I had 160, 70 million ISK at a high point. It's just not there yet, in my opinion, so I'll need a little bit more patience for that. But if you're looking to get into trading and to basically be able to combine that with an EVE Online activity, that will allow you to basically make money in the market and know what's going on, maybe even beforehand. For instance, if you know you're doing faction warfare for the Galente, you know, all right, we're going to organize a big offensive, we're going to take lots of stuff, RLP is going to decrease in value because it's going to become very plentiful all of a sudden. Time to sell some of these ships, and then of course the price crashes. You could buy a couple on the cheap again, and then hold off a little bit, maybe for a couple months. You know that some people are taking a break and things like that. This is really a market where, as a faction warfare player, you could make a lot of ISK just by participating in the game and just by knowing what happens there, which for me, for instance, is a complete black box. I've got absolutely no idea. I just follow these waves and I think, okay, I should have bought there, I should have sold there. As always, I'm usually a little bit late to the party when it comes to that. So that was basically the topic for this video. I find that to be a high potential market. I still love some of these charts. I've said, especially in these battleships, I really like how the Raven Navy issue looks right now. Super expensive. You can make that and sell that. Makes a lot of sense. And then of course we've got that Megatron Navy issue. Not really at the bottom. I'd prefer to see it below 300 million ISK, of course, but it definitely feels like there's potentially an opportunity there. Dominic's Navy issue, that one actually looks potentially pretty cheap as well. For instance, if you want to get that ball rolling, of course. You're of course gambling on then Galente starting to win out again, making a big comeback, and then having those, no, actually not making a big comeback, Caldari making a comeback, so that this becomes more expensive and the Galente faction warfare points become less plentiful, I would say. To end the video, I'm also going to take a quick look at those investments that I'd made. Right, a couple of videos ago I showed you guys that I bought some Tech 2 ships. We are still trying to buy, let's see here, that's on my quick bar, trying to buy stuff. So we're still trying to buy that Guardian for 184. You can see we just missed the bottom. And as a result, we're down here, a bit more competition. I'm pretty patient with that. Here is my Manticore buy order. Oof, that's not so good. If I could have grabbed those for 24 million, which, by the way, when I put this up, was the most aggressive buy order. Could have sold them now for 36 million. That would have been a cool 50% profit like that. That's a better chart to try to sell at. Unfortunately, my predictions have not come true. I'm gonna say yet. Here is the Purifier, a slight tick up, of course, and I should go for the ticker here. I bought these for 22 million. They're selling for 28. People are trying to buy them for 22 to 25 million on some of these orders. Maybe I should look at it like that, even 26 million in the perimeter trade tower. So there's already a slight profit in this, but I was hoping for a bigger bounce, of course. I also grabbed a Basilisk, which I bought for 175 million ISK. Let's take a look at that. Has bottomed out, but again, I was hoping for at least that 230 million mark, if not more, to try and sell it at. It's at 206, 183 for the buyer, so I did buy it right at the bottom. But I'll need a little bit more patience. Cerberus bought for 195. 222, 242. There's definitely some profit to grab in that one as well. But look at the potential. My other two spikes were up to 280 and 300 million ISK. That's the kind of profit that, of course, everyone dreams of. I think 100 million on a single trade sounds pretty damn good. So this is a choice that I have to make. Do I want to go for that third trade right now, or am I patient enough and hope that we get some more volatility later down the line, or perhaps like an event that comes out or something like that. The Cerberus is really a really good ship for active trading. Look at this chart: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now a 7th if you want sell opportunity, and then 1, 2, 3 if you want, 4, 5, and 6 very pronounced buy opportunities, close to 200 million ISK. I mean, this is a lot of money that you can potentially make in this market as well. And this is really a big difference, of course, with that faction warfare story that I just told you. This is just volatility in the market that can be impacted by really a ton of things in the sandbox. And yeah, if you learn to time that market a little bit, you can make a lot of ISK for it. And then finally, I also have this Heretic, which I'm actually really happy with. Bought it for 52 million. Buyers are up to 53. Sellers already at 64. Now I'm gonna wait for this to keep having its impact. You can see nobody is bringing new heretics to the market, so I'm hoping that this will eventually just dry up and that we'll get another spurt up on no supply. That's when I'll try to sell this heretic. I'm hoping for this wave basically to start again from right here. Not sure if it's going to happen. Basically, yeah, I've got some nice positions. I think I could take small profits on all of these already, but I'll be patient and I'll wait for some better sell opportunities with these ships as well. And there you go, guys. That is going to be this video. A little bit more market talk if you want. I really love this stuff. It's a big part of as to why I love EVE Online so much. One big sandbox, and the market is a massive reflection of that, with lots of opportunities, pitfalls, problems. So I think it's really cool, and I really think that the market is still alive. Hopefully we can make all of these trades work. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.